We are reconvening the meeting of the committee, and we are now back on the record. So I am going to bounce around the agenda a bit, and I want to make sure that any of the items that, I guess maybe either they're higher level items or they're going to require an approval of the committee, we get through today. So I'm going to bounce around now to under other business, item B. So I want to have a discussion regarding remote work and actually I want to do remote work and core hours.
Perhaps to frame the discussion, if it pleases the chair, I'm going to try to make a statement that is meant to be in the form of a motion, may or may not. I think I'd rather just sort of lay it out there, and perhaps if it turns into a motion, we could do that secondarily, but I'll take advice how you want me to do it. I would propose that we, for the Internal Audit Department, reinforce and enforce the core hour requirement that is currently codified somewhere in our records, that we adopt the policy for the department of 16 hours each 2-week period of up to 16 hours in each 2-week period of remote work, subject to approval by, in the case of department employees, by the director, in the case of Monica, by the committee. And I'm proposing this because of my belief that there are solid business reasons to work within the core hours and to have an expectation of in-person work. My belief is that there are great benefits by the interaction on a regular basis of the people in the department, with peers and others in the county and the departments that we collaborate with, or the departments in which we're auditing, having the relationship of being able to meet with people in core hours and in person, yet with some flexibility in the remote category, would be a very good business practice. So that's what I throw out as my thoughts, and if you'd like me to put it in the form of a motion, I can. If you want to do it later after there's discussion, I can.
So, Mr. Chair, to Keith's point, I guess I would ask Monica in terms of your staff, that I guess how many do your staff work remotely? If so, like how many hours? What is what Keith mentioned? I guess what is there an impact to the staff?
So currently, the staff is following as per the remote work policy. And so the remote work policy says that pretty much it has to be like a unique circumstance or situation. And so there's only one person that I know of who have, well, actually maybe one other time, but more often than not, there's only one person that typically may have that on my, other than myself, and which we've had to utilize the unique situation. Now, would the staff like to be able to work remotely without the condition? Would that be flexible? And definite would be to the staff. It would be one of the things, as we did with you have seen probably with the recruitment retention, is that that's an area in which we can help to retain staff. So definitely more flexibility. This 16-hour for the staff offers them more flexibility because they did not, I mean, it was like pretty much a one-off is what the policy says.
But I want to be clear, it's 16 hours every 2-week period and subject, in the case of the staff, to your approval. So it's not a blanket policy. It has to work for your sense of workflow and so forth.
Yeah, understood and appreciated, and I think the staff would be very pleased with the additional flexibility that it provides to them.
So I just want to make sure, so we do have a condition, I think in the current work policy, you articulated it, that it has to be for a unique situation. So are we removing that from the policy for the employees?
No.
No. Right, okay.
Okay, well, then it won't be any impact to them at all because, you know, it's very restrictive right now. The remote work policy is very restrictive.
Mr. Chairman, so once the county has a policy that applies to most of the county, then we'll consider it also to apply to the internal audit division. But until that time, I don't know that we have, we want to do that.
I just want to see what currently, how it's worded. I mean, because I would probably be in the minority here on this, but because it is pretty restrictive, as the director has mentioned, right? Other reasons as approved by the employee's reporting authority on a case-by-case basis if unforeseen or unique circumstances arise. When doing so would not adversely impact operations. Requests for remote work based on unforeseen or unique circumstances must be submitted in writing and supported with information required. And then it requires a couple things, which I'm not worried about the requirements. But I would be open to removing the unique circumstances. I mean, I think part of the situation and discussion that we have, and even in the draft, was a recruitment or retention audit, right? The allowing for some flexibility without those restrictions, one could help just morale of any department, but and maybe this is something, I don't know if we can fix in this motion, but I would at least like to consider potentially removing the restrictiveness on it.
I think with all of this, I would prefer just leaving it as it is and just adopting the motion, but we can certainly take it
Can we
to a
put it
vote.
at least on for the discussion for the next agenda then? Because I think, right, our own draft audit that hasn't been released yet talks about this. I believe just even the county executive, even when he was campaigning, talked about potentially looking at a revised policy. I think there was indication that something might be coming. So the timing might even line up with if he introduces something to the full body.
So that would be my preference, would be to defer that until the county actually comes up with the policy, and then we can address that in the future.
Yeah, that works.
And let me say this in full candor to the committee. If this is something that is really more directed towards myself in terms of my remote work, I understand that you have to do it consistently across everyone's. So I do have unique circumstances that do necessitate that. So if I'm not able to get that, and I have mentioned this to Trevor and I mentioned it to our prior executive, that, you know, I have ADA accommodations that I would ask for to be worked remotely. So I will put you on notice that that would be for me. So if you are making your decision based upon, you know, situations with me, I just ask that you just consider the department, because my circumstances are going to be unique and you're going to need to look at some different things for me based upon, you know, me exercising my right from an entitlement perspective to ADA.
Right. This, are you talking about FMLA or ADA?
No, actually, this is ADA. This is be something totally different.
Okay.
So typically, I don't have to exercise this entitlement because I'm allowed to operate in a professional manner. And most places I work for give me the flexibility to be able to control my schedule and to do as I need to do to perform my work without asking for the accommodation. However, it seems this committee consistently, no matter how much I try to work professionally and manage my schedule in such a way that I'm able to still provide a good quality of work, seems to make policies that try to box me into that. So now I'm just going to have to make sure that I, go to the other entitlement of ADA.
Right, this remote work has nothing to do with FMLA or ADA. That would be something to take up through the HR department.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure that because I think that's part of the underlying thing is my remote work and my ability to work remotely. So I just wanted to make sure that all members, I was trying to be very candid and transparent, and thanking the members who have supported, my remote work, just to let them know that would be a consideration for me. So this would not end the ability for me to work remotely.
Right, totally separate issues. This is purely a remote work issue.
Okay.
So you want to frame that into a motion? Or did you already, was that a good enough?
I think I did.
Would probably frame it a little bit clearer to be in a motion, I would say.
Could I ask Mark to put it in the proper form? I'll take another shot if you like.
I think the way I understand it, and
Here, let me try and say it in a proper format. I'd like to move that the Internal Audit Department adopt a policy that core hours as previously defined by the committee shall be enforced, and that a remote work policy of up to 16 hours in each 2-week period be available to all employees of the department, subject to the appropriate approval source, and also subject to the definition of remote work conditions previously adopted by the committee. And I'm doing so as a result of the business. No, let me just, let's put a period. I don't think motion requires an explanation, so we'll just put a period.
So all in favor of approving the
can I
motion?
just have a little, just to sharpen that up?
Yeah, please.
All you're really changing is putting a limit on the remote work hours that are available.
So the
Why,
current,
yes.
Right, the current situations where remote work is allowed is where the building is closed, as the pandemic as an example, or when the reporting authority on a case-by-case basis determines and approves that unforeseen or unique circumstances have arisen, and when doing so would not adversely impact operations, subject to an additional limitation of 16 hours.
Yes, but I'd like to find a way to reference in this motion called recommitment to core hours.
Correct, okay.
all right, so all in favor of approving the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great, all right.
No
So,
one seconded it.
Trevor did.
I second.
Trevor seconded.
Well, that was a different motion, but okay. So,
Did the
Trevor, you're owning the second.
Yeah, second,
Okay.
the clarification by our legal counsel.
I think the motion stayed the same.
Okay.
but-
Okay, all right. Are we done? Is that it? Are we legally okay with what we just did? Are we done with it?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's bounce around the agenda a little bit and see what we can get through. So, So item 7D under old business. So Monica, can you just give the members just a quick update on the charter?
So the charter is with the internal legal department. I have contacted them. We are on their matrix in terms of prioritization, and that's as far as I know. I've asked for an update. I've not received one on where we are in the queue. So I'll just keep asking where we are.
So if you keep this on the agenda, and so just as a reminder to the audit committee members, there was a determination by the audit committee that the county charter should be adjusted to clarify really, I think, two big issues. One is the jurisdiction of the audit committee and the internal audit department, and then number two, accessibility to records and information as internal auditors doing their audit. So I think that's the summary pretty much of what we're.
That's per my recollection, yes.
Okay, all righty, so we can check that off. Director evaluation, so I think we had initially talking about the end of April for this, but so where does it stand?
So it still has not, as per my emails, it is not done. There were several reports which you have that took precedence over that in terms of my restricted ability to work. So I'm still currently working on getting that to you.
You have a target date?
You know, I would like to say yes, but there's always things I've given myself that before, but then other things come up. So again, working with a limited schedule. My mom is coming home again, so I will need more FMLA time. So I'm not really sure at this point in time, but I will email you guys as soon as I know what it's going to look like for me over the next couple of weeks in terms of my schedule and my availability to perform the work and get that done. My review does require a lot of work. I'm really thinking about not even doing as much as I had in the past, but I have started that process and started gathering the data that I believe is necessary to support the efforts as it relates to my review. So I will continue down that course, but short of it is I'm not really sure because I'm unsure of my schedule at this point and my need for FMLA.
Okay, any other discussion on the evaluation? All right, so item C, audit department salary. So I don't, this is just something that, again, audit committee is required to do on an annual basis. Nothing's being proposed here as far as increases, Monica?
Nothing's being proposed at all.
Okay, can check that one off. So I'm gonna jump to E. So the annual update to council. So again, one of the requirements of the audit committee and the internal audit department is to report to the county council, both the work of the audit committee as well as the work of the internal audit department. So we do this through a report that internal audit develops. It was sent to us as far as the packet goes. So I don't know if anybody had any feedback for that. It's similar in format and content to what's been done historically, which I think it's actually a pretty good format for the presentation. So next step would be for Monica to finalize the date of the meeting, and then I think send the report to the county council. So anything else? You don't have a date yet?
Yes, we do have a date. The date will be July 25th.
July 25th?
Yes.
And what time?
I am not certain of that. It's, I have to check to see when that committee meets.
Okay, so if anybody has, any audit committee members have any comments on that report, if you can get them to, you haven't sent the report yet.
Oh, absolutely not. It has to be approved by this committee first. And
Okay.
if you have any changes, we'll make those changes and I'll get those changes out. I know we met and talked, and so we've made the minor changes you have. In regards to those dates, it was, as we discussed, just the 23rd for that July 19th and July 26th that needed to change.
Just
And
change
we will
the year.
change that. Mhm.
Just change the year?
Yeah,
Okay.
to change the year to 22. Just a slip of the thought process. We're in 23, but it should have said 22.
Okay. So if anybody has any feedback or comments in the next couple of days, if you can get it to Monica so we can get this wrapped up. But we need a motion to approve the annual update.
Move to approve the 2022 annual update to the full council, or the report to the council.
Second.
So all in favor of approving the report that was provided, say aye.
Aye.
All right, perfect. I'm gonna come back to F, because some of these other items are pretty quick. So G through J. So again, our responsibility as a committee is to do an annual review of all of these documents. We talked about the county charter, but there's also the audit committee charter, the internal audit charter, and then the internal audit policy, which I guess we probably now have to amend for purposes of the remote work. But I don't think anything's being proposed by the department for any changes to either H or I, and then other than what we just talked about for the remote work for J. So there's nothing we really need to do other than the fact that we kind of document that we're complying with our requirement to do these reviews. All right, so the budget. Let's get back to the budget at this point in time. So this is important. So the audit committee has a responsibility to approve a kind of a two-year budget, an annual budget for a two-year period of time for the department. So we approve it as a body, but obviously it has to then go through the formal review and approval of both the county executive and ultimately the county council. But historically, they have been great with working with the audit committee to approve what we think is necessary for the department. So Monica and her team have a couple of documents that will allow us to kind of better understand it. Are you looking for our approval at this meeting? I don't know the timing of the county's budget calendar.
So the timing kind of still remains the same. We actually just got some communication on that. The time is still going to be, they have to go before council for October. So we're trying to still get our budget into them within that time frame. So there's not many changes to this budget. If you are good with the budget in terms of the thought process, this budget has not been discussed with the executive because we were unable to meet with him, and also they were still earlier on trying to figure out what their policies, what their course of action was going to be for budget. So anyway, typically we do this here, we moved it to this to try to get the thought process in so that we could get before the executive, so that we could get the committee's wishes for a budget into his budget that is recommended. So you can do a formal approval, or you can just say, we're in agreement with the thought process. As long as you're going down that thought process, we're good with you doing that, and come back for final approval later. And if there was a deviation from that, then we definitely would need to come back to you. So you can go either way. You can do a final approval, or you can say the direction looks to be good. As long as that's the direction, when I meet with the executive and work through their process, they continue to go in. This committee is fine with that. Then we can do that, and we can do the actual approval in September. If not, that's kind of what I recommend.
We'll decide that after you actually present it.
That's what I figured you would do. Yeah. Okay. So what we have presented to you is we've presented the 2023. We're going to kind of do a budget update first, so that you get an understanding of current budget, and then you can kind of see how the current budget will actually transition us over into the proposed budget for 24 and 25. As a reminder, the county is on a 2-year budget cycle, so any budgets that are approved are on a 2-year basis. There are there are times when you are able to ask for budget increases in the process, but really and truthfully, try to keep those at a minimal. So unless it's something significant that occurs, this would be our budget for the next 2 years. So just as a reminder to the audit committee, there are no major changes. I'm going to ask Josh to please go into some detail with you as it relates to our budget update, and then we'll talk about the proposals subsequent to that. Yes.
Different than that.
Which one? Was that the proposal?
This is the 23 update, just what changes were.
I think that would be a good document to start with, if that's. Okay. Yeah, yeah, you're right. Yeah, that'd be.
I can't read it from there. All right, so what is on the screen is a update to the 2023 budget. So if you look on that table on the left, there's 3 columns. The leftmost column on that is what the audit committee approved originally back in 2021. So there were some unexpected adjustments along the way. Those adjustments are actually detailed on that table on the right. Now, those adjustments were all in personnel services. They were a result of a 1% additional COLA issued in July of 2022. There was also a 6.44% wage adjustment that occurred in November of 2022. Additionally, we did not anticipate the 3% COLA versus we only expected a 2% in January of 2023. So those all had small impacts on there. There was also a couple other things that were unique to 2022, which included the IG and DIA shared position that John left. So what OBM did was just split those funds down the middle, and so that resulted in an increase to ours. We also had a staff auditor that we promoted to senior auditor that year, as well as PRC completed a classification and compensation review of staff auditors and senior auditors, which resulted in a step up for them on their classification number. So we had to adjust wages to ensure that they fell within the compensation. All those kind of netted out and resulted in an increase of $107,000 to personnel services. So that brings us to the 2023 budget compared to the 2024 proposed. I don't know if you want to switch that. There we go. So this compares the current 2023 budget to the 2024 proposed budget. Now we have the increases listed on the side, itemized by both amount and percentage. Most of those increases, you'll know, just kind of followed a standard 2%. There were a couple deviations within that, including flex benefits, our IDEA software that we use for analytics, and mail delivery charges. Now, those 3 things, the flex benefits I increased based on OBM guidance on how to calculate a proposed budget for future years on flex benefits, so that's healthcare and whatnot. The IDEA software, I looked at the actuals of what we've paid on the last couple of years and just saw a difference in what we had budgeted in the past, so I increased it to match appropriately. Same thing with the mail delivery charges that have been charged to us in the past.
Are you done with this? Are you done with this
With,
page?
yeah, with that comparison, yes.
So my comment and then a question. So, I mean, all these amounts look very reasonable from just a budget year to budget year increase. Do these, has the county provided any guidelines yet? Will this fit within, has the county provided any guidelines for the budget, and does this fit within those guidelines?
We just got them yesterday.
No, not even, it was during the audit committee
Yeah,
meeting this
maybe.
morning.
Oh,
Is
yeah,
when we got
yeah,
a
was this-
communication from
well,
OBM.
No.
Isn't that when Brianna?
Brianna
said
said
that?
it yesterday.
Oh, yesterday then.
Okay. So you don't know the answer to my question
No.
yet? All right. So that might help a little bit of whether we want to approve it today or not, but okay, just wanted to know that. I mean, on paper, they look very reasonable, I just don't know if it's.
And then this last document, if we want to bring it up, is the 2024/2025 budget. Now, there are a couple changes from 2024 to 2025. If you'll notice, let's see, the big things are under contracts, and some of that contract cost shifts back over to personnel services. So the IT service audits. So for 2024, we kept it at what was budgeted before at the 105,000. For 2025, we anticipate to end that need for the IT audit services. And so we shifted 5,000 of it back to audit committee contracts as it was in previous years. And the remainder went to personnel services as it was before. So it got split between, the vacancies and some of the benefits involved.
Can you walk the audit committee members through the IT audit services line? Could you just remind us what's happening in 2023, how that then correlates to 2024, and then why you're not budgeting for that in 2025?
So the IT service or IT audit services, for 2023, we've been working to have an IT risk assessment done. So that risk assessment would basically go through IT's general controls, identify any potential gaps in those controls, and make recommendations where needed, as well as provide testing plans for the controls that they do have in place. So those testing controls in 2024 that they do have in place, we would want to use those funds to actually test on those said controls. And we are running into some difficulties this year getting that risk assessment completed, as the initial vendor who won the award decided that they won't accept the limit to liability. So they have backed out of that award. So we have contacted the second highest scoring vendor, and we are working with them. They're still interested in working with them to handle the logistics on procurement.
Does the timing of that still fit within the dollars and the budgets for both 23 and 24?
I believe so. I believe we can still get this done in 23.
So I will caveat that with the contract process. So we do have to get them on board, but in talking with the next vendor, which is Janus, they assured us that that wouldn't be a hindrance for meeting our 12/31 date. We told them we had a 12/31 drop dead, and they assured us that they would be able to get it done so long as they're on board within the next month or two. So it all depends upon that whole procurement process, which we are not really quite sure of. I think I saw you reach out to Paul.
Yes.
Who's negotiating the contract? Is the law department helping you, or are you guys?
So it goes through procurement with, law has a part of it, but it's really the procurement department.
Well, Heather and Law is handling the actual
Facts.
Legal terms
drafting
and-
with the vendor.
And were those limits of liability or exclusions from liability in the RFP, or how, did they take exception to the RFP, or how did?
So they didn't take an exception to the RFP, but the way it's written is that there was an insurance, requirement that they had. But then, so they accepted that, but then on the other hand, in terms of the limits, they wanted to cap that, which it basically ineffectively was circumventing the insurance requirement.
Take an exception without taking exception. Thank you, just, I was curious.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome, yeah. So we actually, as we always do, we try to improve processes. So we are working with them to improve that process so that no one else has to go through that same issue that we went through.
Yeah.
My only other question, and the vacancy line. So the audit committee approves this amount. So what's the plan, or what's the flexibility, I guess, regarding the vacancy, the monies in the vacancy line?
So for 2024, there would be no vacancies because we're proposing that those monies be allocated to contractual services. For 2025, we would be trying to hire someone to, and my thought is we need an IT person, which is why, we would not need IT services. So I would try to get all of that money in, but we can definitely, my understanding from previous is that once it's categorized in that category of personnel services, the committee can spend it the way, there's no need for additional council approval or review. But if you're gonna move it from contractual to personnel or back, that requires council approval.
So if the audit committee approves the budget as presented sometime in 2024, I guess, we would have a discussion about
Hiring.
the IT position, knowing that the money's in the budget for 2025.
Correct, and of course, we're using this IT risk assessment to set us up and give us a population of work that would need to be done for that position to be hired.
Any other questions about the budget? Audit committee members? Do we want to approve it? Do we want to formally approve it? Do we want to, I don't know what the word might be, say it's okay and then approve it formally at the next meeting after it's been discussed and evaluated against the county guidelines? Or
Yeah, you can direct me to continue with the discussions as per this directive, using this as a base guide for those discussions. That,
If we were to approve it and it goes through the county executive process and is not fully supported in that process, we'd have to come back and reapprove something different.
I would say that would be the preferred way, but it's not necessarily how it could or may go, depending on timing, because the executive has to get his budget in. So the whole thing is to try to work with the executive. I just did a real quick on what Brianna sent. There's a minor amount, like $50,000 or so differential in the personnel, because that's our biggest line, right, personnel services. So I think that's workable. On the year 25, there's a bigger thing, so I have to go back to her to see what's happening. Yeah, the QAIP. So there's a bigger adjustment that will need to be made, but we really kept ours very conservative. I don't have any concern that it won't be approved, but to answer your question, if you approve it, it depends on the timing. If we can get back, you might have to call a special meeting. I'll say that's what would have to occur if you want to reapprove it if there's a change.
Monica, I'm sorry.
No, please, go ahead.
Can we approve the budget as is and also approve any modifications made through the process by the county administrator and the county council?
You certainly can do that. This is kind of very new because we have a new administration. I'm not really sure. So it's very difficult for me to give you definitive things. Keith, I do apologize. I know how it worked previously, but new administration, I can't, I don't want to tie them.
Let me know if this motion works for you, Monica. So I'd make a motion to approve the 24-25 budget as presented with any modifications made through the budget process by the county executive and the county council.
That works.
with, uh, with the discussion that if they slash the budget and we gotta deal with it at our next meeting, I could put that in a motion, but I just wanna make sure the outcome, I mean, if it's, I mean, we have some,
Well, then I think that Sal's motion needs to change, because as I hear it, that means we'd accept whatever the outcome was, and that's very different than what you're saying.
I can't imagine, it's never happened before.
Well, from what I'm seeing, I mean, Brianna, I just, like I said, I just did a real quick thing that it's not going to be slashed to the extent that I think I would need to come back and ask for more. It's something that I think I can totally work out through the process. We can work through it.
So do we want to accept Sal's motion?
Well, I'm willing to, but what I'm suggesting is that that's not going to be consistent with what you,
Right.
I'll put the question back at you. Are you willing to? If you're good, I'm good.
I mean, I'm good with it, just
Okay.
in knowing, I'm telling.
We will, I definitely will raise my hand if budget is not such that we can carry out what you have expected us to carry out. I definitely will raise my hand.
Perhaps I would ask, I'll second the motion, if it hadn't already been seconded, and I would ask if through the process there is any meaningful change, perhaps you could let the chair know in sufficient time that we might try to influence the process.
Absolutely.
When's our next meeting scheduled for?
September.
Okay, so internal audit will know what their final recommended budget to council will be for our next meeting. So we will have the opportunity at the September meeting to make any adjustments before council.
So let me ask you this question, because I know before when we were approving it in September, the concern was he would have already presented had his budget set. Is that still? gonna be-
He has to get it, I believe, the biennial budget is the first meeting in October.
Right.
The first council meeting in October.
Okay.
I recall, I think what you're saying is that we were told in the past, yeah, but
It's too late.
But it's set, It may
Oh,
not have been
yeah.
set by council, but
It's set from the like, and just in years past, council has
Right.
made
right,
changes, right?
Right. Oh, so you're saying it's set with the administration, but then we can go through that process
Process that
of
right, 'cause-
council. Yeah, that's true. That's correct.
We'd rather not.
We'd rather not. We'd rather work it through the administration. Absolutely. Yeah. And we will. I don't think we'll have a problem.
So I suggest we pass the motion and then we leave this as an agenda item for our next meeting, so you could at least
Update you.
write at the next
Absolutely.
meeting, and then if we have to take action then, okay. So, all in favor of approving the motion as presented by Sal, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we'll check that one off. Probably gonna have to defer I could stay for the semi-annual issue update if you'd like, but let me jump around now to K. I guess we're up to K, the current engagements.
All right.
Okay, what do we,
The current engagements, BVA.
oh,
It's fine.
okay.
I can just kind of walk through.
Yeah, just do a real quick walkthrough, very
So
quickly.
there's a budget to actual document on the 2023 audit plan within the packets. There were 5 carryovers from 2022. The first one is facilities. That's actually with the committee for review as of 6/29. So it should be issued by 7/12. There was some discussion with the week on that particular report. The auto title motor vehicle that was already released earlier this year, the employee recruitment, hiring, and retention assessment,
Which document are you referring to?
that one in your hand. So, but it's the flip side for at the moment. So like I said, facilities, the first one, that's with the audit committee. The motor vehicle, which is also known as auto title, that was already released earlier this year. the employee recruitment, hiring, and retention assessment. That is also with the audit committee as of 6:30, so we anticipate release of that to the public on July 14th. The human resources compliance, that particular one, the draft report is with the auditee. HR has requested additional time to fully plan out management responses. Gallagher has approved their 30 days of those management responses. So that should put us at the end of July delivery to.
One moment. As a reminder, we had a process in place that all responses had to be to us within 10 days of when we provide the report. We agreed with management and came up with that if there is executive management approval, that could be extended to a max of 30 days. So just as a reminder to give them the flexibility they needed in order to respond appropriately. And Sarah is new to the position as the director of HR, and she has quite a few audits. She did the direct hiring retention, plus PRC is auditing her. So they're kind of swamped right now, so that's the reason for the 30 days. Sorry for the interruption.
No, that's good, thank you.
So the challenge, if that's the right terminology, that we had with the PRC and the scope limitation, does that affect 3 or 4 or both?
Both.
Both, okay. I haven't read the one that you just sent, but is there language in that report, the best practices report? There is stuff in there regarding the,
Compliance report is actually.
in the report that you already sent, the best practices report, okay.
No,
sorry,
not for best
No,
practices.
not that one, the compliance, which,
Okay,
Yeah, so, yeah, the best practices was a totally kind of different report, so.
okay. But it impacted your ability to get through the scope of that audit,
Yeah.
which is why you switched it to a, no, it's the right terminology, you switched it to a best practices.
No.
yeah, it's referenced in recruitment retention, but it's an actual finding in the compliance.
Okay.
Right, and the best practice was always the best practice. We were always doing that as that way to help management with that challenge of resources.
So last one for carryover is OBM encumbrance, which has been, Monica, if you don't mind, I'll kind of defer to you on that one.
Yeah, so we actually had this originally as an audit, then it went from an audit to a consulting assignment. And we did a lot of work around it, met with a lot of people, got down to a good report, and IT pushed back on some things. And particularly what you were hearing earlier relative to the bank reconciliation in terms of modules happening to appear that they didn't have the knowledge that we had. So there's a knowledge vacuum or, gap there that IT, whenever we put that in a report, they push back on. And because it was a consulting engagement, we didn't have documented, it was basically just people's meeting, yeah, it was inquiry, right? But that was the form in which we used was inquiry. So we removed it from the report, and we thought we'd be able to issue it. They've now come back, IT have come back with some other concerns relative to the report. So we're meeting again because I'm very certain about those other ones. I actually took the time, first the team did it, but then I went back and personally met with people, talked with people, because I do have that IT background understanding to be able to bridge the gap in some things. And so we hopefully can get that issued. We've been trying to, but, we want to give everybody who is a stakeholder an opportunity and a voice. And so we want to definitely take what IT is saying to heart and look at it and make sure that we are appropriately depicting everything as it is and per our understanding. So probably I'm thinking 2 weeks, we would like to issue that, but definitely by end of July, whichever way it goes. It's going to be issued by the end of July.
What is the problem with encumbrance processing here at the county? I mean, why are you even doing this audit? I mean, what actually is the problem?
So one of the issues.
Lee, if you.
Oh,
wait a minute.
I think one of the issues that is going on with the encumbrances is it causes those budget, what are they called? The budgetary compliance issues.
On the
and it-
report, on external audit report.
Yeah, on our management letter, the budgetary compliance issues. And we've tried some various techniques. The system doesn't really work with the way we account for items. We're not allowed to close POs. It's a whole big convoluted mess. But one of the modules that is out there that we just found out last week is a PO module. So we purchased it. I'm not really sure what it does. So when I say we, fiscal, financial reporting, and OBM are going to work together to try some different ideas of how to do some workarounds. Again, they're manual, so we don't like to do that. We want the system to work as it's supposed to work. When we try manual processes, we don't know the full impact of them until, when we tried it last year, it was basically too late. By the time we're done testing it, we think it works a certain way, and it doesn't work the way we expected. We have to go back and undo some things before we close it. We're going to try to do some testing in late September, early October to try to resolve some of these issues with encumbrances. It's the way the encumbrances roll over or not roll over, and the way it impacts the budget. It's not the way it worked in the past. So we've had some challenges trying to make it work the way we think it should work. That's like a high-level overview. It's not real detailed, but.
So it's primarily limited to the way that encumbrances roll over at the end of the year?
Correct. So when we initially did it, we just rolled all of the current encumbrances over into the prior year, trying to make it work the way it had worked in our previous system. It caused, we had, as you probably saw in 2020, there was a big increase in the budgetary compliance violations that we had versus prior years. We can't really close encumbrances because something happens with the system where it's probably too technical for me to explain because I don't really quite understand it. But so we tried something different in 2021. That didn't quite work either. We developed something for 2022 that we thought worked. In theory, it technically did work, but we tried it too late in the year, so there were some issues with the way OBM tried to decertify some transactions. When they tried to decertify some transactions, it affected financial reporting. It was too late in the year to make those corrections, so we had to go with what we had. So hence, we have a whole list of budgetary violations again this year. So when we do our test, we're going to test it in dev. We're going to start earlier, and hopefully it will resolve the issues that we had this year, and we won't have as many budgetary compliance issues as we had in the past. I don't know what the module does that they're saying that there's a module that we purchased. Because we just found out last week. We don't know what that means. We don't know if it will take care of this encumbrance issue or will take care of something else. We hope that we're going to work with G-Force, that's our consultant. We're going to work with them to try to determine the best way to move forward with the issues that we're having.
Thanks.
Sure.
So that was the first one. So we have started some audits. So you want to just kind of.
Yeah, for 2023 audit plan, yeah, there's been some movement. Just running through the list, number one on there, the ethics review, that's still a contingent review, so that hasn't been performed. Number two, sanitary revenues and receivables. This one has been. Yeah, oh yeah, we're in the field work at this point. Yeah, so we're in the field work. It is more complex than we anticipated, so it will take a little bit more time than originally planned. However, we still expect the report to be the audit committee by late August. See, jail operations, that one was deferred at a prior meeting. IT general controls, we've talked about that one with the CBIZ and Janice and the contract issues. So that's where that is. Bank reconciliation, that one hasn't been started, but it is on the schedule. Grants management, that one.
Please discuss that.
Sure. So grants management, we went through the initial planning steps and we were having problems identifying a full population of grants within the county. Part of that is because of Lawson, the system itself, and how they are being tracked versus closed. So in the end, we actually couldn't identify a full population of grants to know. So we've essentially changed the scope of the audit, not to necessarily look at the life cycle of grants, in which we would actually pull some as a sample and run through it, make sure that all the compliance was there. Now we're limiting this report to be on governance processes and controls over countywide grant reporting and maintenance. So that is, again, another module's actually available within the system, but it's not being used. So that report will actually be sooner than expected, just because we're kind of narrowing the scope of the audit down. We expect that one also in late August. Development loan portfolio management, that one has just kind of kicked off. So the entrance conference hasn't been scheduled, but we have started the initial research.
And the rest not started, just for the sake of time.
Yeah, just for this, yeah, we can,
So can I go back to grants management? So you can't determine somehow through the accounting system what's a grant or not?
What is in-
I don't want to clarify that
correct,
statement.
yeah, so what they use is the activities module within Lawson for this. They don't use the grants management module, but they do label them as grants. So when the transition happened into Lawson, it brought a lot of the old grants, and then a lot of them weren't actually closed. So we can see an end date, but it still says that it's an open grant. So we've got an excess in population on one side of this. Now, the other side is that not all grants awards are actually being labeled as grants within that system. So we're missing some, to the point to where fiscal actually has to develop their CFA manually by reaching out to departments. So within that, we're not sure if we can identify all of them, and we have an excess at the same time.
So there needs to be a cleanup, so that's, we pretty much have met with management already and given them our recommendations. One is a cleanup of the system to remove those that are closed out, to close them out. But there definitely are some other recommendations. They had already started, and this is, Lee can kind of give you some more background behind this, but they had already started with a grants policy process as a result of the work that you have to do for the external, what is it, I forget the name of what.
As a result of the CFA report?
No.
Or the Uniform Guidance
Uniform
Policy?
Guidance Policy, there we go.
Correct. So we worked with OBM to make sure that everybody is aware of our current policies, because our current process is not developed into a policy, but our current process is that all grants that are accepted by any agency or department, it has to have council approval. And once it has council approval, it's supposed to be set up as, they're supposed to let OBM know that the grant has been approved for acceptance and use, and that there's some disconnects in that process. So grants aren't always properly recorded in OBM. Once the grant is set up, the departments or agencies, commissions, whatever board, are supposed to use activity codes to track the grants. That part, there's a slight disconnect where they're not always using the activity codes. They're trying to set up accounting units, and that's not the way to handle that. So if an accounting unit is set up and it doesn't have the name grant in it, then to Josh's point, it may not be picked up in the population that they're trying to use, but they're supposed to always use an activity code. So going forward, we're making sure that everyone is aware of the policies and that it's being followed. So that way, it helps us with the CFA process as well.
Earlier today, I commented about a couple of situations where we weren't going to audit a prior period because we needed to get caught up this, that, and the other reason, and I made a speech. And I think I'm hearing the same thing again. We can't capture certain information about the audit population in the past for a combination of reasons. So we're not going to do it. We'll just do a different period going forward. I have a concern, and maybe it's, maybe it's not well-founded, but I have a concern that there are different areas within the county that we have authorized to audit based on risk profile. They're screwed up, so we don't audit them. And I'm not sure that that's the right approach. And I'm not sure where to go with it. At some point, at the very least, it seems maybe we need to tell our stakeholders in an audit report we couldn't audit. I mean, again, the private sector, there are ways to do that. We seem to be waiting for the right, for I'm not going to say perfect conditions, but better conditions, and then we'll audit, and then there's no reporting on if there were problems. It mostly concerns me if we would have any findings that would suggest remediation or recovery of monies. We're just, I'm afraid there's a little hole there. So can you respond and make me feel better?
Hopefully I can, and I do understand and appreciate the concern. I think you might, I might need to clarify what actually is happening with this grants management. We are not saying we're not going to audit it to a future purpose and time. Internal audit is certain standards and disciplines that we have to follow. If we are unable to get a population in which to test, then we can't test. Like, we can't perform our work if we can't say we have a complete population, because sampling is just that. It's based upon knowing you have a complete population, and henceforth, the chances that when you use sampling match, as you know.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I understand that, but I also believe we could issue a report to the stakeholders.
Yeah, we are.
We are.
That say we can't do the work.
Yeah. Well, I think you misunderstand.
Okay,
That's the part I
okay,
think you're
all right.
misunderstanding is we're not saying we're not doing it. When we talked before about looking at scopes and managing scopes, that's what we're doing here is we are managing the scope. We're saying this is the part that we can definitely do solid audit work on. But also included in that report, we are going to be saying, this is what you need to do to address this here issue. So we are issuing a report that addresses that. We just can't perform the testing work. I mean, we just can't test. But we are going to be addressing the fact that we cannot test that in the report. And then we are doing what the rest of the scope that we can do, we are doing it. So we are doing this audit. We are just doing what we're able to do and making a finding based upon what we were not able to do.
But can't you test the grants that you at least know are grants? I mean, so you got a known population, and then you got this unknown population. Can't we at least do an audit on the known population and comment on the unknown population in the report?
So we can potentially do that. It may not be in conformity, but we can certainly do that.
So there's a phrase I didn't invent, but I'm very fond of, which is, don't let the perfect get in the way of the good. And that's how I'm viewing this. I think the taxpayers or council or administration is not getting a timely evaluation of areas of concern because we consider that it's not auditable to our standards, and by the time the passage of time to get a report that even would notify those stakeholders that there has been a problem, the passage of time, to me, makes it more difficult to, if there is remediation that's necessary or recoveries, if grant dollars weren't spent properly, if it sits 2 years before anybody knows that it happened, there's probably very little that can be done. If it's reported more timely, maybe so. No, I made my point.
So we are recommending, so I want you guys to understand, it's not that we're not doing any work. We've looked at it, we've assessed that there's an issue with these controls. We are and we're helping them put into place the processes. We're making recommendations that they put in place a process to ensure just what you're doing. We just know that if we go in and we start, like we just say, we know, it's going to be, like, we're just gonna come up with the same findings that we already know we have. So it's like, it's that bad. Like, we already know there's no processes, procedures, they're not consistent. So that's our finding.
Well, I guess
You know.
I accept the fact that you as the internal audit department knows. The question is, do the other stakeholders, the elected representatives and the public that, which we're a part, when do they know?
They'll know when we issue our report. So it's going to be part of our report. Like, I don't know where the disconnect is.
The disconnect for me is timeliness.
Well,
That's
we're putting it in the report that we're doing now. Like, it's not like we're not doing the work. It's, if you Keith, from public accounting perspective, right? You go in, you are looking at an account, and you know there are absolutely no controls there, right? You're just gonna, you know you can't rely on that controls, and you're just gonna go ahead and you're gonna do your work the way you're supposed to by standards, right? We're saying the same thing here. We know that there's absolutely, like, from what we can see, we already know the findings, and we're going to put the findings in the report. There's just no reason for us to go do the testing to come back and say, yep, just what we thought is there. So it's not that we're not going to do this. We've already determined that there's a lack of controls, that these things are issues, that specific things need to be done in order to make sure that there needs to be monitoring. We already know that there's problems with sub-recipient monitoring. We already know these things. This is all going to be in our report. We just don't have to do the testing to come up with the findings. That's all. I did, Chairman, if you wouldn't mind, I wanted to, while Sal, I know you got to go. I wanted to let the committee know that Catherine, our beloved Catherine Tkachuk, has tendered her resignation to the county. And this will be her last meeting with us. She has delivered, she has delivered tremendous value to us, benefit, with our issue resolution process and just the support of this committee as well as the internal audit. And I didn't want her not to be recognized or give you an opportunity to say if you wanted to say anything to her, but she will be leaving the county and will not be, you'll not get the opportunity in this forum again to say anything to her.
Can I ask where you're going? If it's inappropriate, you don't have to answer.
Yeah, it's not, that's not. So I'm actually gonna pursue some work on my own, doing some consulting, so I'm gonna try that. Haven't done it in a while. I did tell them there's a good chance 6 months from now I call and say, can I have my job back, please? But no, that's what I'm gonna pursue. I think it's been time. I've been with the county for 5 years in this role, so looking forward to trying something new. And so, yeah, I'll still be here for about a month, but as Monica mentioned, won't be here for the next audit committee meeting.
So I do want to thank you. You and I have worked together for almost as long as I've been on the committee, and your role has always been very, very integral in the development of the department and the work that's been done and the database. And I think you know our findings and recommendations better than anybody else, so you're gonna be a big loss to the work that we're doing, so. But thank you and good luck, or bad luck, so come back to the county.
Thank you for all that, but not thank you for the bad luck part.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. I guess one other question on grants, I hate to keep, so if I were to come to you and say to you, for grants that are expired, what's the cash position in those individual grants? Can you answer that question?
We should be able to answer, because most of the grants that are closed, they were in Famous. So Famous was a cash-based system, so you could tell what the cash balance was on the grants that need to be closed out. Now, if the grants closed out, all grants should have an activity code, so you should be able to tell what the grant balance is. Now, if somebody set up a grant in the new system since 2020, and they didn't set it up with an activity code, we would have to manually track what the balance was. It wouldn't be system generated. So yeah, we could tell what the balance is.
Is that a problem?
No, do you want to report?
Well, I've dealt with this. So City of Cleveland, millions of grants, grant administrators leave, people spend the money, nobody requests the money, you got a cash deficit, grants closed out, you gotta eat the deficit. What exists here at the county?
For, if there's a deficit, what is the policy?
No, is there a deficit? Can you, I mean, do you monitor these funds or these
No, so we monitor the funds. We know that if we run a. Pardon?
You know the expenses.
No, we could tell the balances, if you run an AC, I believe it's called an AC 297, it will tell you the balances of all grant activities. The problem is if there is a grant that is not set up with an activity code and it gets embedded into the department balance, in theory, it could have a negative balance. But if it's set up properly, then yes, we do monitor that. But if we don't know that someone accepted a grant, now if it's a federal grant, we know that they accepted a federal grant. The problem becomes there's other type of grants other than federal grants. So if it gets embedded into the person's department, let's say the Department of Development, just for illustrative purposes, if they accept a grant from someone, and it's not a federal grant, we don't know about it, and they put it into their regular operating account, and they start spending money and they overspend, but you don't know they overspent the grant. The business unit, we know if it's overspent, but the grant, in theory, could be overspent because it's not separated out into its own grant. So that would cause a problem, yes.
It's not necessarily overspending, it's the drawdowns. It's somebody
Correct.
everybody's interested in spending the money, right? But on the other hand, they have the equation, you gotta request a reimbursement.
Right.
People leave, right? I mean,
Correct.
And so
Right.
a lot of times that gets lost. Grant ends, grantor closes out the funds, you got a deficit, you gotta deal with it.
Correct.
How do you have that problem here? Do you know if you have?
We in theory could have that problem.
No, I'm asking, I know in theory you could have.
I mean,
I'm
I don't
asking-
know. Like, we would have to have somebody go through there. We have to reach out to the business units to make sure. So that's one of the processes that we're going out. But for the AC 297, something that is actually identified as a grant, no, we don't have any negative cash balance grants that we know exist in the AC 297, because we do monitor that. So I think, am I answering everybody's question?
It's
Is that clear?
well,
I mean, it's clear as mud, but I'm just saying. If it's an identified grant, then we're not concerned with the overspending. It becomes, if there's a grant that's not identified and is commingled with the business unit, there's a possibility that it could be overspent. Because we don't even know that the grant exists.
Those would be the
that's
grants that we
correct.
can't identify.
Right.
Right.
I'm more worried about the ones you can identify.
Oh,
Is
yeah, the
somebody-
grants
is
that we can't
somebody-
identify, yeah.
Is somebody monitoring to make sure that the
Yes,
monies are
the
being
grants-
So
reimbursed?
the ones that they can do the reporting for, they do look at. But the problem is the process to make sure there's consistency in reporting so that they would be able to, that control would be effective.
For
That
all
control
grants.
is not effective because they don't have an effective way of getting everything into the system and making sure everything's where it can be monitored. So,
Okay, all right. Your grilling is over, thank you. I appreciate it, all right. So is that on the current the current?
That's correct.
Okay. You want to talk about item 1 under current audit engagements? Make sure the audit committee members understand that topic. the
the-
remediation of governance level findings.
Oh, yes. Oh, wow, we lost an audience. I think we probably need to come back because Trevor was very integral in that.
You're not going to be doing, are you doing anything with this until our next meeting?
Not, I mean, not really. We have findings that are basically just going to be not assigned to anyone because it's not really in the role, it's by current statute, it's not something that can be addressed by the executive or by the council. But theoretically, internal audit's position is that council is the ultimate responsibility to the tax holder, right? So we've kind of put it, we had to assign it to somebody, so we kind of put the council. Trevor didn't really, agree. He wanted to be able to present his point on that. And we agree, but I mean, we have the ultimate, I think, responsibility for ensuring taxpayer value is the elected officials, the body of who create legislature, which is council. So, but anyway, the bottom line is the action plan for these is not for council to do anything. It's rather, we are recommending that the committee, actually the audit committee, keep these on task on like a list of items to refer them to the, when the charter review committee meets, that the audit committee puts those before the charter review committee as items that need to be potentially addressed in the charter, the county charter, because there is no current vehicle for that right now.
So I don't mean to, so I didn't understand. I think I understand this topic a little bit, but I didn't understand any of that. I just want to, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I want to make sure that, so this is potentially requiring the audit committee to get involved with something that we may or may not want to get involved with.
Well, let me see. I was trying not to go into detail, but if I'll be real succinct.
I don't want you to go into detail. If we don't have to address it between now and the next meeting, then just put it on the agenda for the next meeting. My question to you, is anybody expecting you to do any work on this between now and the next meeting?
It's a finding on the compliance audit, so we need to address it for the compliance report to be issued.
Okay.
We can hold that report back and not issue it at the committee's request. But the recommendation that is there is that it go before the charter review committee, and the action plan that has been recommended and discussed with Trevor is that the audit committee be the vehicle to present that as an item of review for the committee, these issues relative to what we will call oversight or governance level issues that are inherent in the committee, inherent in the county.
So here's what I'm going to ask you to do then, because I'm sorry we didn't get to it at the meeting today. So I'm going to, extract that finding, if you may, extract that finding out of the report, send it separately to the audit committee members, make sure we all understand what it is that is being requested of the of the audit committee and potentially the department, and give us an opportunity to understand it and weigh in on it before it's actually in a report.
So we can send the finding to you.
Just this one. I want to extract it.
Right.
Make sure the audit committee members understand what it is that we're being asked to do. Your perspective as to whether or not, and so this doesn't all have to go in the report. This is just data for us to decide if this is a role that we think we should be playing before it's actually in a report that we may or may not be reading, I guess, to make sure that we understand it.
Yeah, so definitely can do that. I did send it to Trevor. So, yeah, that we were supposed to discuss it more here. So definitely can do that. would we need to call a special meeting for that?
I don't know that at this point in time. Let's just get the information out to the audit committee members, and then we'll have some additional conversations about that.
Point of clarity, Mark, is that okay? Okay, so we have a finding as part of our audits. Typically, our findings are assigned to management. This particular finding is at a governance level. We're asking the audit committee to accept responsibility for carrying the ball of this recommendation to the Charter Review Committee. So they would need, it's an internal audit finding, but there would need to be action taken on by the committee. So that's my point of consideration for you, is whether that can be deliberated outside a public meeting. Yes. All right, Chairman, I will find a way to
Yeah.
get this.
Yeah, I mean, we are your client on this recommendation, so we got an opportunity to weigh in on it. Unfortunately, we may have to weigh in at our next meeting because nobody has seen anything.
So that everyone's clear, is if it takes to the next meeting, this report will be held over to the next meeting.
I'm sorry, which report are we talking about being held over?
HR
This is
compliance.
the HR compliance. So there's a matter in the HR compliance audit,
Right, that was,
which otherwise would be perhaps ready to issue. That's a matter for the audit committee to address.
That we
I'm probably
may-
being naive here. If the report was issued and the department said, here, audit committee, this one's for you, as opposed to management, then we would deal with it. I'm just a little, I'm not quite understanding why
so it's
that
not,
has to be
okay.
discussed in advance of the issuance of the report.
So as discussed with the chairman and as discussed with Trevor, we have issues that have been identified that are governance-related issues, which fall according to current county charter in no one's purview. So it's not a management, it's not on the administration, so it's not an executive issue. And in talking with Trevor, it's not a council per se issue. So it's an issue, it's a finding, it's at the governance level. What needs to happen, the recommendation is that the Charter Review Committee take this up from a governance perspective. The only people that are, at this point, can be labeled to do that would be the Audit Committee. That is Trevor's recommendation, that the Audit Committee take that up and accept that responsibility to make sure that item, those actually is more than one,
So
two
hi-
items get to the audit.
So hypothetically, if we didn't want to deal with it, if we just, once we understood it better, said, nah, we don't want to deal with it, does that mean it wouldn't be in your report?
I don't know where we'd be with it, because it's a significant issue. I mean, it's really a conundrum, it really is.
Yeah.
No, this is the problem with it. I mean, it's not our fault, it's not audit's fault. It's a governance issue, and this issue has to do with when you have non-executive agencies and agencies, you know.
I guess we don't want to get into the details now, but from a sanctity of the audit process
Right.
viewpoint, if you, as the internal audit department, have a finding, I think you report on it, whether it's some level of management isn't gonna be happy with a particular item, or whether the audit committee isn't gonna be happy with that item. I'm not sure why you wouldn't report it out, and then we have to deal with it. How we deal with it, we'll figure out. So I think I'm,
Well, we have to, first of all, we have to respond to it, right? And
as any other level of
Yeah,
management
right,
would.
And I'm suggesting as it was
Okay.
presented to me, and I want to see it in writing, but I don't think, I don't want to be, I don't want to be responsible for that in my capacity, but I think, but everybody else has to weigh in on it. Trevor thinks we should be responsible for it. I think it's out of, it's
All right,
out of
so
our.
we're at the stage in this audit where you're discussing findings with management. We're, on this one item, we're the management.
Well,
And okay,
you're,
and so,
you're being asked to give this because there's no, yeah, you're being asked to assume that role because there's no other body that can do it.
So here's an example, if I understand it. They want us as the audit, help me if I'm wrong on this, they want us, so right now you got this whole executive, non-executive issue within the county charter, right? Just it's a jurisdictional issue. So I think the suggestion is they want the audit committee to go to the county, the Charter Review Commission and explain why the charter should be changed for that purpose. Right? Is that
hypothetically,
is that-
what would be wrong with the report being issued, that charge to us, and then we discuss it here and go, no, we're not gonna do it. It's, I mean, that,
Well, in following the process, I mentioned this to the chairman, discussed it with him, discussed it with Trevor, and they said, bring it, put it on the agenda for this meeting. So that's why, so for full audit committee discussion. So, you know, they were trying to give you a discussion, a platform beforehand. We can certainly issue the report and let the chips lie. I'm able to take direction. I took the direction to put it on the agenda and get it discussed. I can certainly take the direction to just issue the report with it being as the audit committee, and let you guys kind of have the discussion later. The one thing that I just wanted to be clear about is if it's an item of action, we can't discuss, you know, that outside of this forum.
Can you pull that finding out of the report and?
Yeah, I mean, I've sent it to, it's just, our finding is basically how we do our reports is it's all findings separated. And so we can send it right now to everybody.
Let me finish my thought. Can you pull that particular finding out of the report, still go forward with issuing the rest of the report, and then give us an opportunity to address it at our next meeting in public, and then provide a response on behalf of the committee, and then somehow issue it as an addendum or as a secondary, I don't think we're gonna, I don't wanna speak, I don't think, like, I'm not gonna agree with it, but I'm the only one who knows. a
We've
little bit
not
about
done
it.
that before. I'm not sure. Let me find out from a standards perspective. I've never seen a revised audit report issue. Have you ever seen that, Keith? Can we do that? Huh? I mean, so you issue it and then you go back and you revise it. I've seen follow-up reports. I haven't seen like revised reports, but we
well,
certainly can
I'm
if
not
you'd
sure
like
it's
us
so
to.
much a revised report. To me, this would be, first of all, this is internal audit, not a financial statement audit, different kinds of standards. But if you put in the report sort of a placeholder that there is a matter that has not
Okay.
been able to be processed by the responding body, which is, in this case, the audit committee, and so that it's sort of acknowledged without disclosing what it is, and then we come back and fill in that blank later on. I think that's what you're suggesting.
Yeah, something like that.
I'm perfectly comfortable with
I
that.
don't even know if I want the finding. Do you agree with Trevor's suggestion that this is an audit committee responsibility? Trevor's the one who I think, is suggesting to Monica that the audit committee.
Well, the
address
finding is a very valid finding. It is true and it needs to be dealt with. It is significant to taxpayers. So the issue itself now, like I said, audit's perspective, and I don't know this form of government, so I'm seeking council on that. So I've met with some people in council about, in the council to see, but there's different schools of thoughts about this. But from the way I see it as a taxpayer, when, the ultimate authority or responsibility for my taxpayers, I'm looking to the people who create the legislation. So I'm looking to council, to, if there's some area where they don't currently have jurisdiction and they need the jurisdiction to ensure my tax dollars is good, I'm thinking that they would do the charge. I do understand Trevor's point about it as well. For me, it doesn't matter so long as someone takes it to the review committee, because it's an issue that has to be addressed.
So the finding is different. So it's the recommendation that says the audit committee should do it. There's nothing in the finding, then I would be okay with issuing the report with the finding and just say, I don't know what you want to say with the.
The action
managers.
plan is that the audit committee takes this, so that's the action point for it, is that the audit committee will
Had Trevor
present this.
not, sorry, he's not here. Had Trevor not suggested this go to the audit committee, would your finding likely have been this should go to council?
My
And where I'm going with that is you-
finding would have been,
You shouldn't be influenced, but
no, I always seek counsel, right? So not really influence, but you want to try to understand why things are the way they are from, perspective. So anyway, it would be as we've written it. I've written it as an issue for council, but the action plan is on the audit committee. So that's how we've written it, is that it's a council, the recommendation is to council. So we make the recommendation to council, but rather than council have an item that they feel they shouldn't be addressing, that they don't have the authority to address, because Trevor said anyone can take it to the review committee, I'm saying, okay, well, if nobody wants to accept
can't you say that
responsibility.
council, I'm not trying to influence your report, I'm just reacting to what I'm hearing. Couldn't it be presented as, this is an issue for council, council has recommended, or representative of council has recommended that the audit committee review the issue? Would that be, I think that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
And if that's how it's written, then we can review it and we can decide it's our problem or it's not.
I can definitely write it up that way. That wasn't the proposal, but that's definitely an alternative solution that I can take. I can definitely write it up that way.
I guess that would be an option. I'm a little uncomfortable with that because, it's a member of the committee who's kind of recommending that the audit committee do something without the audit committee having an opportunity to discuss it and weigh in.
Well,
we could certainly, like I endorse the concept, right? But being the responsible party to take it to the charter review, like we're going to be doing with the change to the charter for the audit committee, right? That clearly fits within our responsibility because that's pertains to.
What if the president of council, instead of Trevor, had recommended it? Would that be different?
No, it wouldn't have been any different. I mean, I still don't think we should be, well, I don't think we should be doing it until we have an opportunity to discuss it.
Yeah.
To decide whether or not it fits within, because it's gonna take time, right? We're challenged right now with trying to figure out language for the charter change for something that we understand, right?
I just want to be clear, I'm not suggesting that we take responsibility. I'm just suggesting we have the discussion. And we may, after we have the discussion, reject the notion that this is in our purview.
So Keith, in looking at what you're suggesting as an alternative to kind of what we have, I would say, is what you're suggesting that as an action plan, we put down that council has requested that the audit committee present this as an action item. And then when we're doing our follow-up work and we come to the audit committee and say it was requested by the council that you look at this, the audit committee can say, no, we don't want to look at this. We don't want
Right.
to take on this responsibility.
But is it a true statement that the county council has requested or just a member of the?
Well, we would have to, that's the footwork I'd have to do, is go back to Trevor and see if we can get council to actually request that. But if you guys are okay with that language, then we can try to do that and let it fall through the process of the follow-up process, right, Catherine? It could fall through the role of follow-up process, and we could get the report issued. Otherwise, if we're waiting for you guys to discuss, it would need to be, I think, in a public discussion. And we couldn't do it by email. So we would either have to have a special meeting, or we would have to wait to September to issue this report. I just want to make sure everyone's understanding that.
Which goes back to my suggestion about even taking the finding and everything out of the report.
That's another, if we take it out, we would then be looking to issue an amended report later on, is what you're saying. Okay.
So that would be my suggestion. I could go the route that Keith.
I just want to protect the integrity
Of the
of the
report.
department, that if there's a finding, that it be dealt with. If it's going to be dealt with sooner or later, I can't be passionate. I just want to be sure it's dealt with and we're not trying to influence you to take something out.
I would agree.
should
I'd much
be in.
rather, if we know it to be a finding, I really don't want to get to cherry picking what's going to be in the report now and then amend the reports later. I'd rather not do that, to set that even as a so,
But you haven't given us the opportunity as management to respond, and we gotta do it at
well,
a
that
public
was
body,
what's
and we gotta
supposed
do
to,
it.
that's what was supposed to happen at this meeting,
Well,
so.
if you would have told me, I guess, if you had advised me that was the position after you had talked to Trevor, then I probably would have moved it up in the agenda to make sure that we could have addressed it while he was here. So
I'm sorry I didn't remind you
I'm in a little bit of a bind
the
here
beginning.
because so.
Yeah, apologies, I did not remind you.
So what do we want to do? You can't be silent on this one because you're now on board.
Well,
I take
I do
direction.
agree with Keith in terms of maintaining the integrity of the findings, but I am uncomfortable with assuming a responsibility for something I know nothing about.
So could you keep the finding in the report and just not have any recommendation, and then somehow say you're gonna come up with a recommendation after the committee has had an
Well,
opportunity?
there is another option, I think. Again, your decision. But if I understood you right, you made the recommendation that this was responsibility of council. Had Trevor not intervened, I'm presuming that's how it would have been written up. So maybe let it go the way you originally intended and let council then decide if they want to
So
kick it back.
let me clarify that. That was my thought without getting additional information on how things are structured here at the county. Once I understand how things are structured here at the county, he has informed me from a legal perspective, they don't have the authority and it's not in their ballpark. So given that information, I'm back to, okay, well, so whose ballpark is it going to be in? And so Trevor recommended as a solution that it be in the audit committee. So he was trying to help us get this no man's land sort of thing.
What if he had recommended it was the county executive? I mean,
So then I probably would have gone to the county executive and he probably would have said, not my ball. But I kind of already know that it's not his ball of, it's not his, because his authority is very clear. It's only over those agencies subject to him. So we already know that. This is a broad-based issue which council has more broad authority over. That's why I would think it was council. But he's informed me that it's not. And so I'm trusting his judgment since he's been, very much aware of what is the responsibility of council and is not. So given that information, I'm back to, well, how do we get the action taken that's needed, which is.
Could you go, if there were a county charter commission currently sitting, which there won't be for a few years if I understand, could you just take the finding there and let
According
the,
to Trevor, I could.
and let the commission then decide how they want to investigate, or process would probably be the, how the commission decide how it wants to process that comment. And my recollection of how the Charter Commission works, they break down into work groups or something like that. It gets assigned to one of those work groups. They may consult with us, they may not.
Right.
So why not just
I think
lay,
I think
lay it
somebody
there
had-
for, and let it sit for,
I don't think it works that. I think somebody has to endorse it. Somebody
Really?
has.
Yeah, I mean, somebody has to take it to, like, I could take it as the
Some-
director of audit.
But can't the internal audit department take it as
But if she,
opposed to the
but if she,
committee?
but if she takes it, then it becomes, well,
Then that's, I mean, that's ultimately what is back to what we're recommending, is that the audit committee take it, because I'm directed by the audit committee, so it really would be us. It
So
would
I
be
realize
our
I'm on the
department.
public record with all these comments and
Yeah.
they're sort of ugly, but it's not,
It's,
I'm pretty candid.
So
It
it's a-
sounds
it's
like
an-
we either talk you out of the finding or.
this is a governance issue.
But we're gonna have to
It's a
deal with it.
significant issue that the county, I think, needs to address. And the people, when I talk to them, everyone understands it's the elephant in the room that needs to be addressed. We've had some talks about it, about how it just impacts even on the fiscal side, some policies and things that need to occur. So this issue is a prevailing issue, and it's really hitting at the core of the control structure of the organization. So, you
I
know,
would certainly endorse it. I just don't know if I want to be the one to present it. I mean, I think that's
Understood.
That's the issue. So, but I want a
so
solution on this because it's where we
I-
passed.
I guess we will just have to agree to, I'll do as you said, I'll send this out, just the issue, and then you can make the decision whether you want to reconvene a separate meeting or you just want to wait to September to issue this report. That's pretty much what I'm hearing as the options.
And there's no middle ground where you could just keep the finding in the report and find some language that would.
Like
it
to
doesn't-
be determined, action plan to be determined?
You know,
I don't know how.
But to be discussed, I mean, our problem is we have to meet in a public body.
I'll
right?
try to
So-
see what I can come up with. I'll go back and try to be creative and come up with something.
Okay,
We'll try to make it work. We'll try.
all right. So the only thing we didn't get to on the agenda was the semi-annual audit issue update. Is there any, can you do it in like 2 minutes? Is there anything in there that's a,
That's a major concern?
right?
No, not really.
So things are progressing, you're updating it, you're getting through it in your audit cycle, determining what, okay. Seeing progress by the recommendations being implemented, all sorts of good stuff. You want to go through like the first page, the summary that just kind of shows the, can you just go through like the high-level summary? So we
I
get a
would say
sense?
to like start on page 3 if we do, which is kind of the activity for this year.
That's me.
Okay.
This is the issue tracker report?
Correct. Yeah, so page 3, it starts off as first half 2023 activity.
Got it.
Looks like this.
Got it.
So, just running through the first half activity, there were 2 audits released since the prior issue tracker report, so that added 40 tracking on the issue. Testing completed in the first half, there was 36 of them. Of those 36, 30 of them were fully resolved. Excuse me, 27 were fully resolved. 3 were withdrawn because of the process, so the recommendations were no longer valid. Of those 36, there were 6 that were either a partially or not resolved conclusion. With those, we have advised follow up at a later date. Moving on, current status, it shows how many were actually closed. It comes back to that 30. There are 141 still open. Of those 141 open recommendations, 15 require some IT consulting, which is actually part of the IT services work that we would be requesting as well. Another 49 are currently being tested, so we're in process at this moment. There's another 30 that we plan to test this year. And then moving forward to the next page, there are 47 that are scheduled for testing in future years. Most of those are basically either ones that we had the partially or not resolved conclusion this year, or our newer audits.
Can I ask you, could you go back to the first and the second page of this,
Sure.
the one report that carries over? So this is a summary by actual audit itself, right?
Mhm.
And it shows how many high, medium, and low, and then how many
Correct.
recommend, okay. So if I were to ask you, is there any department or audit report that you issued that you're not seeing appropriate progress on the implementation of the recommendations? Would you, is there any
I
way
mean,
you
we
would
could,
point
we
out?
could look at that, yeah, I mean, just scanning on the first page, they're in order of release, so to speak. So the ones more towards the top are gonna be the older audits. So with that, IT contracts, the procurement, for example, 12 of those, I can almost guarantee that all 12 of those are the ERP, where we want a little IT consulting to make that determination. Invest in children, to be honest, I wouldn't be able to I can't tell off the top of my head. There's one moderate, my guess is that we tested it, and, we just haven't followed up, considering it's a moderate, so that's part of the future years. IT inventory, most of those are high, so they are on the schedule. They will be followed up again, in December, or last quarter, basically. Medical examiners, which medical examiners only a couple-year-old reports, that we have tested before in the past, and they basically said, we're still working on it. So we conclude, either partially or not resolved in the past, and so it's again on the schedule to be looked at again.
So on that one, you had 5 recommendations, and all 5 of them are still outstanding, based on your testing?
Correct.
Is that how I touched, okay.
And just as a reminder, this is how we are, and before we were just doing follow-up, but you can see it's more on a continual basis that we are making sure that these things get implemented, and we're testing, and we're not just resolving. So it's a continuous auditing process that we're utilizing for this.
Are there incentives for a department that has findings to resolve them to our satisfaction versus just letting them sit? Are there any, I guess, incentives for good behavior or disincentives towards bad behavior? Or does it just stay on our
Well,
list
kind of.
forever and ever?
They get rid of us, that's the incentive for good behavior.
Well,
I'm just putting a little humor into our
I
afternoon.
understand.
But honestly, Catherine was a really, the one in which was key to this process, and the executive support. So it was a goal of theirs to ensure that these items were appropriately and timely resolved.
For example, if I'm not even going to name a name, if, any department on here has not resolved its findings in some period of time, does it drop into the director's personnel file? That their department is, I'm being a little facetious, but not
Understood.
really. I mean, is there any
Yeah,
consequence to?
We're not there yet. So there are not consequences, but as we seek to work to build this process a little bit better, you have to understand too that the county doesn't have a performance management process for any of its employees that required. So, we're working on
We
building
could do
some
public
things.
shaming.
Yeah, yeah, we
I
could
mean,
do.
It is reported at year end to the, executive level. And
Yeah.
so theoretically, the idea there is that executive level filter that down. Here, get this corrected. This is still outstanding.
Yeah,
And you do present this when you do your annual presentations to county
we do
council.
present it to the county, yes. I mean, to the council, yes.
So because they kind of, one meeting, they actually asked the same question. Are the departments implementing your recommendations? So I think this kind of shows.
Yeah, and if we felt that there was anyone where we're not getting appropriate resolution, typically there are a lot of things with the work that we've been doing. There are some complex issues and things that are going to take some time, and they're trying to work through them. So as long as there's measurable progress in the amount of time in which we come back, we're not going to say you're not doing anything. So it was a coordinated effort between Catherine and our team to ensure timeliness. So although it may not look timely, if you're not hearing us say this is not timely, then it is timely, given the nature of whatever the issue or the problem is.
Thanks.
Okay, that's great. I don't know if I want to ask you to do this, but how hard would it be to put a issuance date into this file? Do you happen to have it in the?
For issuance date?
Yeah.
Not long, we can add that too.
It might be helpful to know. I guess it's, I'll defer to you guys on that, but at least for.
No, that's fine. I mean, we kind of maintain this and it gets updated every 6 months or so. So I mean, just adding a date of that, I wouldn't think it would take much effort.
It's not the date that you guys do your work, it's a date that the audit was issued.
Correct.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah,
so it'll just be helpful to know it was, 3 years old versus 6 months old.
We keep that information. So
Okay.
it's-
Okay, so I think we got through the entire agenda.
Except for the emerging risk.
Oh, yeah, you wanna talk about that?
You want me to talk about that real quick?
Real quick.
Okay, real quick. Management did a request relative to sheriff chargebacks. It was actually an audit committee member, Mike Chambers. We looked at it, we met with management, we looked into the issue.
Tell me what sheriff chargebacks mean.
Sure, so the sheriff charges back certain expenses to everyone throughout the county. Well, not everyone, but protective services, as appropriate, like back to the prosecutor's office or back to services rendered. They charge them back, they allocate these costs back out to others within the county. So that's not everyone, but to the people who use the services. Okay, so there was a concern or question brought up as to the accuracy, completeness of some of the chargebacks that were coming through. When we met with management, what we ascertained the request to be was really work that is transactional and level, not from an audit perspective or review. It wasn't for our level, it was really for them. The fiscal department needed to perform that level of review. So what they are doing, Lee, is that you guys are doing this review for the sheriff chargeback. So when they get it from the sheriff's office, fiscal is now reviewing it and looking at it and validating it as is appropriate. What we have agreed for Mike to do is we can look at the process and be able to give some recommendations on the process. What we learned, though, is that there was a time sensitivity to that, and we were not able to meet that time sensitivity. So pretty much they are just going with the process, and how it's gonna play for us is when we do our risk assessment, this issue will come up as an item to increase the risk level for that area. So they'll be more subject to an audit. But as a reminder, we spent like decades, and I won't say decades, but we spent several years looking at sheriff's department in this organization, the audit department. For I think the first 3 or 4 years, they were in the sheriff's office doing that's where all their audits were. So so their risk had gone down, but this will, at least as it relates to chargebacks, will bring it back up. So it was a request. We are keeping it on our list of things, but it's what Mike has asked us to do is as we find time to come and take a look at it, if we can find the time to, spare.
Okay. Alrighty. Item 9, public comment unrelated to the agenda. There's none. So our next meeting is September 7th, 9 to noon. We'll hopefully get out of here by noon, and so we are adjourned. Need a motion to adjourn? I always forget.
Yes. Keith,
Second, so all in favor of adjourning? Maltrice seconded.
Maltrice seconded.
Say aye. Aye. All right, thank you.
Got you on record.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.